What's up, guys? So the high budget version of the build is finally done. It's been a lot of work, a lot of hours in POB, grinding things and figuring it out, but we have done, I feel like, a really good job on this. The build is crazy tanky. We do a ridiculous amount of damage, and the craziest thing about this is that this isn't even like the mirror tier, crazy expensive version. That, I mean, you can definitely pump more DPS and more survivability out of this build than what's currently in there, and what's in there now is pretty insane. So I'm excited to share it with you guys, so let's jump into it. So first things first, let's go over the changes that we've made to the item set. So for our weapon, we have swapped out Matah's Teachings for a Convoking Wand. When you first replace your Matahs, you are going to probably see a DPS drop. No big deal. We're going to make it up as we go, and I'll explain how we recoup some of that DPS and go well beyond it. But in the beginning, you are going to drop some DPS. So we want a Convoking Wand. We want to have the implicit try to be max rolled or as close to max roll as you can get it. We want to have +1 to all spell gems, +1 to all minion gems. We want minions deal increased damage, ideally 100% or more. We want minions have increased attack and cast speed. And then this is the big one. We want to have minions have increased critical strike chance. Ideally, you want this to be 100% or higher. The reason being is we're losing a lot of base crit from Matahs by replacing Matahs. So we want to try to get this number as high as we can to try to make up some of that DPS that we lost. Okay, and then lastly, we want to have the trigger craft on there, and we'll go over what that's going to trigger in just a second. All right, so for our shield, we want to be running a defensive shield. I'm currently running the Surrender. If you don't know about this shield or you haven't used this shield, I made a previous video on that shield. I'll put a card in this up here in the corner so you can take a look at that. Really great shield. If you don't want to use the Surrender, there's a ton of really good options out there. There's a sap shield, which saps enemies when you hit them. Really any shield that gives you life on block. You just want a good defensive option here. Okay, helmet didn't really change. Soccer walls is exactly the same. We haven't changed that. Gloves and boots are the same. Ashes of the Stars. Here you want to try to get closer to a max roll since we are approaching the high budget or getting into the high budget. I got lucky with mine and I hit it with a couple divines and got max rolled. You could also just buy one max rolled. I don't think they're too expensive, but it does help a lot, especially with our auras. So that's for that. And then the rings. So this is where some of the spicy tech comes in that I mentioned earlier. So we're running a double Hungry Loop setup, and what we're going to be running, so the first one is going to be our Animate Guardian, and that's what we're going to have there is we're going to have Feeding Frenzy, we're going to have Maim, which gives us access to Maim again, we're going to have Meat Shield and Minion Life. So the Animate Guardian should never die, and we're applying Maim and Feeding Frenzy, and it frees up some slots, okay? And then our second Hungry Loop, we're going to be putting in our Carrion Golems in there, and we're going to be putting melee physical damage, melee splash, multi-strike, and minion damage. And then some of the other spicy tech that I mentioned earlier is a Lease of Oblation. Now, this is a really cool unique. So what this does, so normally you can only trigger one of the offerings. This is going to let us trigger all three. And what we're going to do is we're going to put all three of those in our Convoking One with the trigger craft, and we're going to trigger all of them. So really cool to be able to have that. And one of the biggest problems I found with this build was scaling the damage is really easy. Like, it's very easy to get the damage numbers to just go insane, but also having that survivability and not just getting one-shot or getting blown up, that was a problem I was having, and this fixes some of that problem. Getting access to Bone Offering is huge. It gives us a ton of a spell block chance. It gives us a ton of a regular block chance. Really good. So that's that. And then as far as our flasks go, we did add in a Bottle of Faith, we did add in a Progenesis, and then we're running a Ruby flask and we're running a Topaz flask. For the skill links, we made quite a few changes, so we'll go over each one of those changes. For our helmet, we're running an Arcanist brand setup still, but we're just doing Assassin's Mark and Desecrate, while Vitality is just hanging out here as an extra socket. For our weapon, we are running a triple offering setup, and that with the trigger craft. So we're going to be triggering all of these spells. And what is allowing us to run more than one offering, if you remember, is going to be the Leash of Obulation, which allows you to run one of each offering. Okay. For our other offhand, our shield, we're going to be running a Dread Banner setup with Generosity and Precision to give that to our minions. For our rings, we have shifted over to a double hungering loop setup, like I mentioned in the item section. For one of them is going to be for our Animate Guardian. That's going to have Feeding Frenzy, Maim, Meat Shield, and Minion Life. And then for our second hungry loop setup, we have moved Carrion Golems out of our 6-link into the ring. The reason is we only have 2 Carrion Golems now, so they're more of like a support minion. And for that one, we're going to have melee physical damage, melee splash, multi-strike, and minion damage. For our 6-link, we have added in Val Summon Skeletons, and our zombies are still in our chest. And the support gems are going to be Awaken Brutality, Awaken Melee Physical Damage, Awaken Minion Damage, and then Awaken Multi-Strike. We have decided to take off Impale in favor of Awaken Brutality for 2 reasons. One reason is it's just a bit more DPS. It's not a whole lot. It's maybe like 1 or 2 million more. But it gives us access to Crushed, which is additional physical damage reduction, which is really big because we're a pure physical build. For our gloves, we're running Raised Spectre, Val Molten Shell, Convocation, and Summon Holy Relic. Now, I know the Summon Holy Relic looks kind of weird. It is crazy, crazy good. We'll show you a clip here so you can see how ridiculously good this is. So you're probably wondering how we're triggering Summon Holy Relic when we don't actually attack ourselves. Aha, but we do. Check this out. This is really cool. So if you go to the Surrender Shield, if you read the line of text, grants level 30 Reckoning skill, what Reckoning does is anytime we block, it's going to do a small amount of damage back to the attacker, and that counts as an attack. And since we are block chance capped, we're going to block pretty often. Now check this out. I want to show you the big difference that this makes when we turn this on and turn this off, right? So right now our minions are regenerating about 500 life a second, and we're regenerating about 600. So if we turn this on, it more than doubles our life regen, and it more than triples their life regen. It's going to give your minions a ton of survivability. They should basically never die, and we're going to have a ton of life recovery as well. You'll only want to do this while you're mapping. If you're bossing, you're just going to put Meat Shield back into place of Summon Holy Relic, since we're not going to be running a shield anyways. For the rest of our skills, everything else is the same. So for our boots, we're running Pride and Determination and a 2-link. And the other 2-link, we have Val Haste and Divine Blessing. And then we have our various buffs from our Animate Guardian and from our aspect of the Avian. Now for everyone's favorite part, the skill tree. So I went ahead and turned my camera off for this section because my head was blocking quite a bit of the nodes, so make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what's going on. So we did make quite a few changes to the skill tree. We're not going to go over everything. We're just going to hit on some of the key points so you understand kind of why we picked what we picked. So right smack in the middle, we are taking a Thread of Hope, a medium Thread of Hope. The purpose for this was just to free up some points. So we're taking this Lord of the Dead over here, which saves about 2 points here. And then we were initially pathing to the right over here to connect the tree. So that saved us about 3 or 4 points. So we're saving about 5 points total. So nice little save there. On the right hand side over here, we did add in a small cluster jewel to this large cluster. And the reason for that is it allows us access to endurance charges. So the small cluster that you want is you want 1% chance to block spell damage. And the notable that you want is you want rote reinforcement, which allows us a chance to get an endurance charge whenever we block. Since we're block capped, we're gonna get endurance charges pretty often. Okay. Down here on the left, we are still running an Impossible Escape, but we have swapped it from the Agnostic to a Ghost Dance. The purpose for that is we are running a Timeless Jewel over here on the right. We'll go into the Timeless Jewel in just a second, but that's the purpose for that. Okay. And then up here on the left, nothing really changes on this side. We are running a 30 dex, notable here. feels kind of bad, but we did lose quite a bit of dex because we swapped out some of the ghastly eyes, and this was the easiest way to really fix that. So if you have another way to get dex and not compromise anything else in your build, then do that. But the easiest way for me to fix it was just to take this one agility point. Sucks, but kind of what we had to do. Over here on the left, we did add in a medium cluster. This one is really important for our skeletons because otherwise your skeletons are going to die. So we want a 4 passive medium cluster, and then the notables that we want are Blessed Rebirth and Dread March. You're not going to take Dread March, you're just going to path to the right to get Blessed Rebirth, because if we don't have this, our skeletons are basically going to get one tap. This is going to allow our skeletons to stay alive and do a bunch of damage. Okay. Nothing really changes on this side of the tree. Down here, we did add in another Thread of Hope, this one on a large radius. The purpose for that is just to grab Glancing Blows and to grab Divine Shield. Frees up quite a bit of points both down here, pathing down to those nodes, and also these 2 notables up here. And lastly, on this side of the screen, we did add in another large cluster, and we are running a Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame setup. And then what we're adding here is we're adding Plaguebringer. Plaguebringer, what that does is that gives us a bunch of damage reduction and a bunch of damage. It gives, and also 30% area of effect, which allows us to take this point out of the Aura Mastery, Reservation Mastery, which is kind of nice. So this is going to add, it adds 30% area effect. If there's at least one corpse, you and nearby allies are getting 10% more damage. And then when you're by at least one corpse, nearby enemies deal 10% reduced damage. Pretty good. And lastly, we had the Timeless Jewel. The Timeless Jewel you're looking for is going to be 29,620. This is the best one for our build. There are a couple other Timeless Jewels that are okay, but they're not really the ones that you want to go for. You want to get this one if you can. What I would do is if you don't find anyone right away that's selling it on the trade site, just activate a live search and hopefully someone will log on relatively soon that has it. The jewel isn't very expensive. It's just sometimes hard to find. Okay, so that's the jewel we're taking. Up here, Ghost Dance with our Impossible Escape over here on the left. That's allowing us to allocate these points without having to path to them, which just saves us points. So the points we're taking are going to be Gleaming Legion. It's going to give us a bunch more armor. We're taking Robust Diet, which is going to give us a bunch more life. And then we're taking 2 Slumlord nodes. So what the Slumlord does is gives our minions 80% increased damage. This is a huge, huge DPS buff. And we're taking a total of 1, 2, 3 of these nodes, which is going to give us 240% increased damage to our minions. As far as DPS goes, this build does a ridiculous amount of damage. So for the mapping setup, we have both a mapping item set and a bossing item set. So for mapping, if we go to skills, right now Val Haste and Val Summon Skeletons is turned on. It'll be turned on in the POB. If you want to get a lower end damage calculation, you can just turn these off and just see what that looks like. So turning those 2 off, what that's going to do is that's going to drop it down to 146 million, still crazy high. With these turned on, we are at a little bit over 200 million, 208 million. For bossing, we're sitting at 360 million DPS. Now, the reason why we have such a big damage increase from mapping to bossing is we're making a couple changes in the items. So for our weapon 2, we're going to be swapping out the Surrender Shield and just adding in a second Convoking Wand. If you're fighting an uber boss and you take a big hit, you're probably going to die anyways, so having a shield isn't going to really help. So just get quite a bit more damage. And then you're going to have a 3rd Hungry Loop, which you're just going to keep in your inventory. The reason for that is that Melee Splash doesn't do anything against a boss, so we're going to replace Melee Splash with Brutality. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. I make weekly content with a big focus on PoE, but sometimes we'll do gaming reviews, gaming news, things like that. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And if not, till next time, have a great day/night. See ya.